Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial on CryEngine, and this time we'll be doing a little bit of procedural generation. My idea is that I create this area which should serve as a room, and we're gonna uh, transport those entities that I added here to a random position, and we're gonna also add a wind rotation to it. Now it's very basic and it's a little bit limiting. For example, you only have certain entities that you can work with. You cannot duplicate them so far, but it. On the other hand, it gives you a little bit of control over how many assets you want to have in the scene or in the room. Uh, so just want to tell you that this is very basic and it's all done in Flowgraph, which I think is pretty easy to do, and I think it's the most comfortable for non-programmer like I am. So we can go to Flowgraph right now, and what we have in the start is basically a loop that triggers every 1 second, and this triggers the placement of the entity. So basically each for 1 second it will place one entity, after another second it will place another entity, and so on and so on. You can also play with this number, make it lower, and by doing that you would have a shorter time for generation. So another thing is the coordinates generations. Now you can see I used math random node, and this is going to generate a random number, but this is very important. This is the min and max value. So we can take a look at how we came to these numbers, and you can see that I have 4 entities in here that marks the boundaries of the room. So when we go in here, I also added like a sphere mesh so that you can you sort of have a visualization of that, and it's it's got position, of course, and what we're gonna do, we're in a we're generating a x coordinate. Okay, so x is this and this. So we're gonna take the highest number, the higher position, which is this. Put it in here in max, and then we're gonna go with the lower, which is this, and put it in here. But looking at it, you might say, wait a minute, the numbers are different. Well, that's because you don't want to place the geometry on the edges, right? You don't imagine there's like a line over here, and imagine that there's a, I can show you. Imagine that you have a wall in here, and you don't want to spawn the objects into the wall. So that's why with the higher number you have to deduct, I hope I said it right, make it smaller by make it smaller by 2. So this was 523. I made it 521. I figured out that lowering it by 2 is enough. 1 is not enough, so 2 I think is pretty good. And then when you have the lower value, you have to add 2. So this is 499, and I added 2, and I added 3. So it should be like this. But you get the idea. Then for the y, it's pretty much the same, just comparing this and this value. And then we have a rotation, which is basically a number anywhere from 0 to 360. Then you have to take those numbers and make them vector, which is vector is used for position and rotation. So we need this node to vec3, and we just drag the output from the first one to x, output from the second one to y, and the z, this is the position up and down, basically, just like this. And this needs to be the same as this should be the same if for the room. If you do have multiple floors, you can modify it, but for the purposes of this example, we're gonna just think of this as one floor room, and therefore we're gonna use the z value of that we have over here. I stumbled. Okay. Next, we do have the rotation, and basically, when you take a look at those meshes, you probably don't want it to be rotating like this or this. So what we're gonna do basically is we're just gonna use X for rotation. And this is, I think, really good because it's gonna the random rotation is gonna enable the objects to look more naturally, I think, more disorganized and not all the same. Also, when we talked about the Z value, it's pretty important that your pivot is down. So basically, when you're creating a model, you want to make sure the pivot is at 0, 0, 0 position. Otherwise, if you had a pivot over here, like in the middle, the model would be like this. Okay, so it's really important to have a correct pivot position, otherwise this won't work. Okay, so next we do have the actual placement of the objects, and for that I used beam entity. Now unfortunately I have to create one node for every model. So basically you create a beam entity. That was extremely loud. Then you select the object and you just assign selected entity like this. Now you want to use the first node and drag it to position, and the second node and drag it to rotation. And you want to do that for all of those. And now that we have that, every time I think it's connected. Yeah, okay. Every time this uh, creates an output, it will trigger the beam entity. Okay, so first of all, it's gonna beam this one. But we need to use logic ones, otherwise it's gonna be triggering every time, and we only want to trigger this once. So it's really important to use this one. And for another ones, I created a gate because we do want to trigger them one and then the second one and then the third one. So I created a gate. I closed the gate. Then I created once as before because we only want to trigger this once. And I opened the gate when the first one is triggered and done. And then when the second one is triggered, I open up the gate for the third one. And then when the third one, I open up the trigger for the fourth one, and so on and so forth. This is really important because the generator creates the position and the rotation for all the entity that we are moving. And if we just trigger everything at once, it would be in the same position. So let's say it's create a position 555. It will create that position for all of the entities. So by doing this, we will move this one first, and then for the second one, it will generate a different rotation and different position. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. If not, feel free to comment down below and I will be more than happy to answer all the questions. And now finally we can enable physics and AI, which will also enable the Flowgraph scripts, and we can take a look if it's gonna work or not. I hope it's gonna work. Can hide the helpers, and you can see that all of the 5 objects have been placed. That was extremely loud. We can do it again. And yes, you can see that those objects have been placed. So this is really basic solution for procedurally generating position and rotation. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was fun making this. And if you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer. If you learned something and you think it was interesting, you can leave a like or subscribe to the channel. I will be more than happy for uh, for every like or subscriber. And see you next time.